Welcome to Law Subscribed. This is your dedicated news source for all things subscriptions and the law. My name is Matthew Kurbis. I'm the subscription attorney, and I believe subscriptions can help bridge the access to justice gap and incentivize attorneys to modernize and scale their practice like never before. In this episode, I interviewed Donata Stroink-Skillrud. Donata is the president and legal engineer of Termageddon. I didn't only ask to have her on my show because of the amazing portmanteau business name, but also because she is a prime example of productizing legal services on a subscription to help end users and lawyers who want to provide terms and conditions and privacy policies to their clients. Due to popular demand, I'm launching a subscription seminar where you can learn directly from me how to adapt the subscription model to your law practice. You can sign up for the waitlist at subscriptionseminar.com. Thanks to my sponsors, 650 and Gavel, links to both in the show notes and more on them later. Please share this podcast with someone you know who might be interested in it. This podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only, and nothing said is legal, ethical, or financial advice. Without further delay, here's the episode. Donata, thank you for coming on the Law Subscribe podcast. Please introduce yourself to our listeners.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you everyone for joining us. So my name is Donata, and I'm an attorney licensed in Illinois, as well as a certified information privacy professional. What I do now is I'm the president and legal engineer of Termageddon, which is a software as a service subscription that generates and automatically updates website policies like privacy policies and terms of service. I'm also the chair of the American Bar Association's e-privacy committee and the chair of the Chicago Bar Association's privacy and cybersecurity committee. I'm also on the cybersecurity legal task force of the ABA and part of the Science and Technology Council on the ABA as well.
Well, that makes me feel a lot better about recommending people use Termageddon now that I know the full detail of your background. I figured just the fact that you were a privacy attorney was nice, but with all that background, I feel even better sending people your way. So you mentioned you were a certified information. What was it exactly?
Certified Information Privacy Professional, and that certification comes from the International Association of Privacy Professionals, which if you're a lawyer listening to this and are interested in privacy, it's a very hot field right now. So they offer a number of different certifications and resources and courses on privacy and privacy law, which is really fun.
Yeah, and it's mostly lawyer listeners, some tech entrepreneurs as well, but knowing lawyers, they like to sort of do their own thing, but it's a lot of work. And why should they when there's this thing called Termageddon that starts at $10 a month, which is kind of unbelievable. You think about the time investment required to get certified and acquire the knowledge that someone like you has. You've built this incredible product that whether you're a company or an attorney, you don't have to, right? Like why did you come to build this product?
So when I finished law school, I was in private practice. So I had a number of clients who came to me and, I worked with them on forming LLCs or corporations, writing their contracts, and all of them had websites. And I think one client, and I don't remember who, but I should probably dig that up and thank them. But they asked me, hey, do I need a privacy policy or terms of service on my website? And I said, let me look into this. And I guess I'm still looking into it so many years later. But I had, these clients who needed website policies, and I started writing them for those clients. And I really noticed that I was asking them very similar questions, first to figure out what privacy laws apply to them, what disclosures they need to have, and then questions about like sharing data or using data or transferring data. And then I had, 5 or 10 templates that I would Frankenstein together. And to be honest with you, it was a really terrible process. It was very time consuming. It was very, you kind of did the same thing over and over again. And I'm like, well, there should be a way to automate this. And that's where the idea for Termageddon came from, is the fact that I was doing this as a lawyer for clients. And I really disliked doing it because it was very kind of repetitive. And I thought we should automate this part and lawyers can get that kind of annoying part out of the way. And then they can review the policies and make sure that they fit their clients, make adjustments as necessary, and save themselves a bunch of time and save the client a bunch of money too.
Yeah, interesting though. When lawyers hear saving time, they think that that's costing them money sometimes, right? So this is where sort of, obviously the subscription model or alternative fee arrangements come in, because if you are saving time, that is valuable. That's worth something to your client and to you, right? So, what have you seen with regard to when you talk about that aspect of it? Do lawyers start to get really concerned that it's going to affect their billable hours?
Actually, no, it's really the opposite because they can still build a client for looking through the policy and making edits and making changes. And then they can really build a client more frequently because we update policies as the laws change,
Mhm.
which if you're a lawyer and you weren't doing that before, that's a very, very important step is to update these as the laws change. So you get that included. And then you really get the time back to do actual lawyer work, which is advising your clients on how to
Mhm.
comply with those laws, right? Privacy law compliance, a privacy policy is like 10% of what you need to do as a lawyer. So you get that time to actually provide your clients with advice instead of doing this work that can very easily be automated. So at least from my point of view, you don't have to do the really annoying stuff of Frankensteining templates together and going back and forth in emails and asking all these questions. You kind of get to do the fun lawyer work, which is advising your clients on how to actually comply.
Yeah, that is the fun lawyer work, absolutely. And what I'm hearing in your story is sort of that classic entrepreneur journey of I had a problem for myself and I found a really great way to solve it and thought other people might like the solution as well. Is that a fair
Exactly.
assessment?
Yeah, that's a very, very fair assessment where I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore. This is boring and this takes too much time, way too tedious. I want to do other stuff. So I'm going to solve this problem for me and then, ended up solving this problem for a lot of other lawyers and businesses as well.
Yeah, and then another thing that I think is worth pointing out, and I like your perspective on it, is the whole niching down thing. Because certainly document automation is taking off, right? We've had Corey Kelly on this podcast with Legal Karma. I know that there's Documate that's out there. There's all these. I think Hyperdraft does a little bit of a combination of like contract analysis and automating drafting. So there's all this document automation that's coming out, but you have niched down even further into just the terms of service and privacy policies, right? So like
Yeah.
talk about like why I mean, you kind of already maybe mentioned it, right? But you're like really niching down here. And I think that there's value in niching down, right? Has that been what you've experienced?
Absolutely. I think, especially in the legal landscape that we're in right now, where everything is changing so much, it's really difficult to not niche down because if you are providing, you're helping people with DUIs, you're helping people with divorce, you're helping people with forming corporations, you're helping people with, figuring out SEC rules, that's really, really difficult to keep track of all of those rules and all of those laws and how they're changing. And I think that can be kind of a hard thing for lawyers to keep up to date with all of that all at once. Just in privacy, we have, for example, 6 new privacy laws going into effect next year. So if I'm sorry, this year, it's 2023 now. So if I were to focus on a bunch of different things, I don't think that it would be humanly possible to keep up to date with all of that. So
Mhm.
niching down, I think, as a lawyer is really helpful because number one, it makes your job easier. You don't have to keep track of so much stuff. And number two, it helps your clients better connect you to a particular service. So they're more likely to give you referrals for that service. If they know me as a privacy lawyer, they think of privacy, they will think of you, right? And lastly, I think it helps with marketing for lawyers as well, because if you're offering every service, that's really hard to establish yourself and kind of differentiate yourself from different lawyers versus if you offer one service, it's a lot easier.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's really well said. And then even just as the legal tech entrepreneur that you are, not even the lawyer, right? And so are you still practicing law, or this is it, like legal tech all the way?
I think I'm 90% legal tech all the way. I have a few of my old favorite clients that are really, really good, that I really like, that I
Mhm.
will sometimes help with contracts or other stuff, but that's very much the exception. I definitely want to continue doing this because really SaaS is just, I don't want to say it like this, but it's a lot easier. And it's a lot easier and it's a lot more fun than dealing with individual clients.
Yeah, yeah. And although I agree with you, of course, because I'm the subscription attorney, and I
Yeah.
agree that subscriptions are easier than the traditional way of practicing law, and we will get into that. But let's then talk about your pivot from 100%, practicing lawyer to now 90% legal tech entrepreneur. And how did you get into the legal tech? Because you mentioned why. We talked about your why, but what about the how? Like, were you going to ABA Tech Show? Did you find a technical partner? Like, how did you make that transition from lawyer to legal tech?
So my technical partner, quote unquote, is my husband. So him and he was working at a software development firm before this. And actually, so was I back in the day. And we were talking about this, and this sounds so cheesy and so unrealistic, but we're actually talking about this over dinner one night. And he was saying, I'm building these websites for these clients, and they're asking me to write their privacy policy. And he's like, but I'm not a lawyer. I don't want to do that. I don't know how to do that. So I'm like, look, I have a very similar problem. Let's kind of put those two together and create something out of this. So we got, we put together a business plan after work, and we got investors, and his firm actually built the initial iteration of the Termageddon service. So that's how we started, is we kind of started this together, which was very lucky that we had a very similar problem at the same time.
Yeah, that is a great subject for like a different podcast or a different interview of like how to work with your spouse as co-entrepreneurs in a business, right?
Yeah.
I've listened to those podcasts, and so like I know that they're out there to talk about that. And while I find it super fascinating, we'll stick to this the context of this conversation. So then let's talk about that product journey. So you start the company with your husband, his firm or his company helps build the initial product. Like when was that initially, and like what has been the product journey and the iterations, and how did you decide what worked and what didn't?
So we initially started in 2015. So this was right about the time where GDPR was about to go into effect.
Mhm.
And the way that our service works is that we ask a series of questions. So we figure out what privacy laws apply. And then from the disclosures that are required by those privacy laws, we ask the remainder of the questions, and then the answers are used to generate the policy. So it's essentially a bunch of yes and no flows and yes and no logic. So I can say that I'm probably the only person who used my LSAT learning in my real life. Which was very lucky. I initially hated the LSAT, so I guess that makes sense that this is what I do now. And so we started off by creating these flows and building the MVP product. And then we had some beta users. So we had a lot of website designers using our service to start off with. And they gave us feedback, right? They said, hey, this button doesn't make sense here. Or, this process is confusing for purchasing a license or something like that. So we kept on kind of taking that feedback into account and building upon the MVP. And then we really kind of hit it off once GDPR went into effect and a lot of the other privacy laws went into effect. So that kind of expanded the product by a lot without us necessarily, thinking about that ahead of time, because when we first started, privacy laws were pretty static. It was really not something that was updating very frequently like it is now. So we ended up building and building upon the product when it came to the policy generation process, and we had people saying, hey, I participated in an affiliate program. I need my terms of service to include that. And we're like, great, let us build that. And now, now that we have a lot of users and thousands of policies generated, we learned a lot through that process. So we're actually going through a redesign process right now, which is completely changing the way that the app works in terms of the user experience. The policy generation process generally staying the same because it works and because it is sound the way that we created that. But we are changing the user journey and things like that. And I think that's one thing that's very, very important to understand that I did not realize when I was practicing law and going into legal tech. It's not just that you're going to build it and then it's just going to run and, it's going to be the same way that it was 10 years ago. It's something that changes very, very frequently based on customer feedback, and you can find bugs. So software is not one of those things where you build it and it works today, so that means it's going to work tomorrow. There will always be things that break. And I think that's something that's very important to realize when you're going into legal tech.
Yeah, and just for the For the lawyers who are curious but still are starting on their own, even enter legal profession entrepreneurial journey, MVP is not most valuable player. It's minimum viable product, and sort of what you're talking about building the airplane as you fly it, or building the boat as you sail it, is that agile methodology of continuing to iterate the product as you go, which is something startup land knows very well, and the legal profession does not.
Absolutely. And I know some folks in the business who have taken 5 years to build their product because they keep on trying to make it absolutely and totally perfect. And what's going to happen with that is you're just going to blow through a lot of money without knowing whether or not you have an actual viable business model. And that's why I really like the MVP route, because it allows you to figure out whether you have a viable business model, because you're only going to know that once you start getting your users. So it's best to, at least in my opinion, to go with the MVP and then build upon it as you kind of learn more, because it'll end up in a better product and it will save you a lot of money too.
Yeah. So another thing you mentioned is you have clients who have affiliate programs that they need to mention in their TNC.
Mhm.
Is that something that Termageddon has considered, has done? Has Termageddon considered like white labeling? Like what are some of the ways that you've considered like growing your market share?
Yeah, so we do include affiliates in our disclaimer generator, actually. And what we do is we give people referrals. Or actually, they provide us with referrals and we give them a cut of that. We also provide website designers with a way to sell us wholesale and things like that. We don't offer white labeling for website designers just because we don't think that that's the best route, because we don't want their clients to think that they're the ones who are responsible for this. But for attorneys, the way that it works is once you generate policies, you get an embed code. So the embed code is what goes onto the website policy pages, and that's what displays the policies and allow us to update the text as laws change and things like that. But for attorneys, we also offer the option of downloading the documents. So you can download them as a PDF or as a Word doc. So as a lawyer, your relationship with your clients, that's your business, not ours. So if you want, you can use the embed code and let the client know that you are using Termageddon, or if you don't want to let your clients know that you are using us, you can just download the Word or the PDF. We kind of stay out of that relationship as much as we can, and that's why we offer that feature to attorneys, but we don't offer it to anyone else.
Yeah, I think attorney mentality needs to change on like, oh, I'm doing everything bespoke for you, my client. And like, hey, look at all this cool legal tech I'm using so
Yeah,
that I could better serve you and you save money. Right.
for sure.
And that's where the subscription model comes in, at least the way that I'm running my business. But now let's talk about your subscription model and why you chose to go the subscription model route for Termageddon. Why did you make that choice?
So here's why I like the subscription model for Termageddon and for lawyers in general. So a lot of the clients that I've worked with in the past, they kind of have this assumption of my attorney wrote this contract and then I'm good, right? I can use this contract for the next 50 years, no problems whatsoever. But there's a huge issue with that when it comes to law, is that laws change. And I think the usual attorney-client relationship does not really take that into account very much. Usually when you talk to a lawyer, you'll say, okay, I need this contract. Here's what I need for it to include. And, you write the legal stuff, include the stuff that I wanted to have, and then we're kind of done. And I think that's really dangerous in a lot of different industries because the laws change. And when it comes to subscriptions, you take that into account. So your clients' contracts and their documents are continuously kept up to date with changing legislation. And that's why we did Termageddon as a subscription model, because privacy laws change, consumer laws change, contract laws change, different services that affect privacy or terms or contracts, those change their terms too. So you need to accommodate that. And that's why we chose a subscription model, because we don't believe that a privacy policy or a terms of service is a static document that you can just write one day and then be fine for the next 10 years. Because like I said, 6 new privacy laws going into effect this year. If you wrote your privacy policy on December 30th and it didn't include those, it's out of date.
Yeah. I definitely could not have said that better myself. That is that is a great summation of the value of the subscription model and how legal services actually are provided. It's not a static thing.
Yep.
Um, but now let's get even more granular with it. And while your business is technology, more so than just because the way that you're delivering the product, so it's not quite the same thing as like delivering legal services. I still think there's value in figuring out why you chose the prices you did and the way that you did it. So the way that you see on the website, which of course will be linked in the show notes, termageddon.com, is $10 a month and then an annual option for $99. So let's just maybe start about why you picked the monthly option, monthly with the annual option.
Because I think it's nice to give people a choice, right? Some people want to pay monthly, others want to pay annual. I have a lot of subscriptions that I use myself. Some of them I want monthly, others I want the extra savings for annual. So I wanted to offer that, flexibility to customers. A lot of our customers are really, really small businesses who may not be able to afford the annual option. So they get the monthly option because that's more affordable to them. And that's totally fine. It's whatever works best for you. And I think what we took into account when we were determining our pricing was competitor pricing. So what I saw and what my husband saw when he was, running his agency and he was referring clients to competitors for their website policies was that it was very, very confusing. So it started off as free, but then it would ask you, hey, do you want GDPR compliance? And that's extra $10. Are you a company versus a single person? If you're a company, that's an extra $20. Do you want CCPA compliance? That's an extra $50. And you start off with this cost that's going to tell you, okay, it's going to be free or it's going to be $10. And then you actually get to the final point of the generation process, and then you have to pay $500-600. And you're like, man, I feel kind of cheated right now. I was told about this price, but then if I need compliance, like actual compliance, then I'm going to have to pay more. And I think that's a very kind of bait and switch type of model, which I think is very unfair and it's very frustrating to consumers. And I know that if I'm buying something and I'm taken through that particular process, I'm mad, because I already spent an hour putting all of this together and all of a sudden my cost is significantly higher than what I thought it would be.
When I went solo, I pivoted from mostly litigation to a transactional-only practice. I did not have a database of documents to automate. That's why a business and employment legal document database and automation tool like 650 is super useful. I can rely on the quality of the documents in 650's database since they're putting excellent legal minds to work curating and updating their documents and automations over time. When you're not billing by the hour, outsourcing and efficiency matters, and 650 can help you scale your practice to get high-quality documents drafted in less time. Use the code LAWSubscribed at 650.com and when being onboarded to get 10% off. If you're not a business and employment attorney, or you have your own documents that you'd prefer to use, then my next sponsor, Gavel, is the automation tool for you. Gavel allows you to build shareable, client-facing workflow and document automations. In other words, Gavel helps you create a legal practice where attorneys can monetize the value they bring clients in productized form at scale via subscriptions and flat fees. Use the code LAWSubscribed at gavel.io to get 10% off an annual subscription. There's no one right way to automate and scale your practice, but with one or both of my sponsors, 650 and Gavel, you can take your subscription law firm to the next level. Links to both in the show notes. Now back to the show.
And lastly, too, I think that kind of alienates people from compliance, right? Because if I have to pay an extra $50 for CCPA compliance, I'm going to say, you know what, maybe I don't need this, where in reality, I actually do. So we don't parse our pricing based on privacy law, based on policy or anything like that. It's just one cost and that's what you pay and you get what you need.
Yeah, and so it's not only simpler for the client or the customer, but it's also simpler for you and the business to operate
Absolutely.
the business. You could better project what your revenue is going to be because you're not like, well, we need to get this many clients to get this amount of revenue that sign up for this add-on or that add-on. It's like we have two prices. We have those types of subscribers. We got monthly recurring revenue, annual recurring revenue. You could run your business a lot more easily that way, right?
Absolutely, and you get a lot less questions that way too. Well, do I really need CCPA compliance? I don't know. Is
Mm.
this worth the cost? Well, there's two plans. That's it. And we get some clients who ask us, "Hey, can you provide us with a quote?" No, we can't. That here's the pricing page, $10 or $99. There are no quotes. There's no enterprise plan or anything like that. We just try to keep it simple because privacy and website policies, they're already super complicated, super confusing. Let's at least bring this out of the calculation.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm a big fan, and so my question for you though is just a clarification question. Is that you tried the freemium version, or was that something that other competitors were doing the freemium with all the add-ons?
That's what our competitors were doing. We never
Mhm.
had a freemium option.
Mhm.
Our pricing has been the same since 2015.
Okay.
Probably should change that with inflation. But we kept it simple. Our competitors do the freemium options, which I just don't think work as well. I think they're very frustrating for someone. So
Yeah, yeah, and it's complicated, right? Because to raise your price, even something as small as $5 would be a 50%, increase, right, from month to month.
right.
So for the small businesses or solopreneurs,
Hmm.
that is actually a lot, even though it's only just a little, right? Um,
Absolutely. Yeah.
hmm hmm and we'll get into access to justice next, but I'm still on this freemium thing that you're talking about, and you've said all like the evils of it and why it's terrible and it's bad, which I love, and it brings me back to the legal profession, thinking about that free consultation, right? Oh, lawyers will give you one free consultation and then you could hire us, right? And like that's kind of the freemium version, right?
Yeah, it is. I never did that. I always charge for consultations because from what I found, at least in my field, was that I ended up just in that hour providing them with the legal advice and then they just left and didn't need me anymore. So it just ended up kind of eating away at my time and the client's time too, because they thought, well, I'll just go in for that free hour and then all of a sudden it's an hour and a half or it's 2 hours and the client is not taking the best advantage of that time either, versus when they're paying for that time, they come in and they say, here's my problem, here's what I need, here's what I'm looking for. And it was a lot more efficient when you were charging them.
Right. And even the psychology of it, right? Like it's not even necessarily the amount that's being charged, it's that they're paying for it, and that's the relationship is different at that point.
Yeah, and it's kind of establishing that your time is valuable and you're a professional. I think there are some instances in which free consultations work to kind of take away those clients who are not going to be good clients, right? So I think there are some industries or maybe some fields where a free consultation would work. I just was never able to make it work for me.
Yeah. Or there's a middle ground of a very low cost for a consultation, which is
Yeah,
why my subscription started $20 a month for
absolutely.
clients. So, that's I am trying to solve that problem actually. Which brings
Right.
me oh, go ahead.
And I think that's a lot, you see services like Rocket Lawyer or something similar that offer subscription services. And honestly, I don't like that model because I don't know who the lawyer behind it is. When I see services like Rocket Lawyer, I think there's just a bunch of lawyers in a warehouse somewhere, in some dark, dark, cold warehouse who are just picking up the phone. And I personally like the subscription model when it comes to a lawyer who I know personally much better than those kind of big box services, because I think then, you can really build that trust versus, services like Rocket Lawyer, not to knock on them, just using them as an example. It kind of seems a little bit more like a black box where you don't really know what you're going to get versus an individual or a law firm offering those types of subscription services. To me, that seems like, clients would be a lot more likely to trust that than those big box type of services.
Yeah, and well, I don't recall Rocket Lawyer specifically. A lot of them are also bait and switch with it's a subscription that's affordable,
Mhm.
but then when you actually need like an estate plan or something, they're going to charge you by the hour. It's like it's a
Yeah,
reduced rate. Like that's part of the subscription value is you get a reduced billable hour rate, but it's still the billable hour in most of
I'm
those
sure a lot of
situations.
clients don't realize that either. They think they're going to buy the subscription and everything will be covered, which is why as a lawyer, when I was practicing more, I really made sure to do engagement letters with clients so that they knew exactly what was going to be done and how much it's going to cost, because then that reduced the amount of disputes or the potential for disputes, versus lawyers that don't tell you, this is going to take this much time and this is roughly how much you're going to pay, because otherwise the client is just, well, I didn't know this.
Right.
you know
Right. Transparency is super important. And I do like to talk about my own law firm here, not because I can get clients, but so other lawyers can learn from what I'm doing. And the way I'm trying to solve that is all my prices are on my website. Right. And so like instead of getting the sticker shock of I now added 20 things to my cart to check out, it's like, well, I knew what those prices were before I signed up, because it's hard to do what you're doing unless you're niching down in your practice. Like,
Yep.
and so like, since I'm not, and lawyers might be hesitant to, like, that's sort of I think that's what we have to do. That's a takeaway from this interview is you have to be transparent and you have to have upfront conversations. Um,
Absolutely.
so tying this all back into like why I've priced things my way, why you price things your way. We sort of have like a similar mission there, and that it's sort of access to people who didn't previously hire attorneys or get legal services, whether that's from an attorney or productization of legal services, because they couldn't afford it. They're priced out of the market. And so there is an access to justice element of that, but there's also market opportunity there, right? Because these are people or businesses who are not being served. So like, what have you learned from going after a market that was like a nascent market?
I think most of what I've learned with the lawyer and client relationship that was not learned in law school, I think I learned the most of it from my husband. So my husband's not a lawyer. And he told me, and I could not believe this for like 3 years, but he told me that, regular people are scared of lawyers, right? They're scared of the cost, which is one part of it, but they're also scared of the lawyer themselves. And I think that goes into the fact that the legal profession seems a little bit like a black box to regular consumers, right? They think that we know some kind of treasure trove of knowledge that is inaccessible to anyone else, and that we're keeping that treasure trove of knowledge behind a paywall, right? And I think what we learned a lot with our business with Termageddon, we're not a law firm, but we provide a lot of resources and knowledge to our customers. So we have a very, very robust blog where we talk about, new privacy laws, why you need these policies, or if you need them, how things should be structured and how things should work. And I think that's gotten a lot of our clients to be more comfortable with us, is offering those extra resources, because they don't know that they need policies. They don't know that they're collecting personal data, even though they clearly are. And a lot of those things are very, very confusing for them and very frustrating and very intimidating. And I think what I learned from working with him is to learn to translate that legal speak into regular, normal human speak. And I think that goes a very, very long way with clients. It goes a very long way with having them come back to you, having them trust you, having them want to work with you, versus a lot of the lawyers that just, talk like they talk to another lawyer when they're talking to their clients. I think they lose out on a lot of business that way, because clients are intimidated and they're scared. And I know I did not believe that for many years. It's like, what are you talking about? We're just regular people. But apparently that's not the case.
You mean you're telling me you didn't get your superhero card after you got your JD like I did?
I did get a ABA registration card, but that was about it.
I thought once you get your JD and you pass the bar, we all have superpowers. But I guess
Well,
I was misled.
we did get those capes at graduation,
That's
which we
right.
paid way too much money for,
Yes.
that we're never going to use again. But that was about it. Yeah.
Yeah, and like with everything happening with like Chat GPT right now, though, I wonder if like a tool like that could be utilized by lawyers to help them talk in normal human speak, which is funny because they'd be using an AI to do it. But
Yeah.
feel like there is opportunity there. It's like put in like a legalese email or memo you were going to send to a client and put it in the Chat GPT, obviously not with personal identifying information, and like say like translate this into a more simplify this language into a more comprehensible form, and like see if
Yeah.
Chat GPT can do that. I'm really curious to see.
What's really cool is that Grammarly has a similar feature where it tells you the reading age of a particular text, right? So you'd have to be like, eighth grade reading level. That's usually what you try to strive for. It's really funny about Chat GPT. Really quickly, one of our investors asked Chat GPT to write him a privacy policy that says that he does not sell or share any data. And it was really funny what came out because it was self-contradictory. So it said, we're going to send you email marketing. Well, you can't send email marketing without sharing data, without at least two email marketing provider, like the email service provider, like Gmail or Yahoo or whatever. So self-contradictory, which was really, really interesting. And it was very short, obviously didn't comply with anything, but, I'm safe for at least a little bit, I think.
Yeah, and it's going to just become a tool to be used for different things, right? It's not going to replace anything, but if anything, it might
Yeah.
just help save some time for lower level tasks, not the high complicated legal compliance issues. Um,
Exactly. I
mhm.
wonder if someday we're going to see a case of somebody who wrote a contract with Chat GPT and then got sued for it, being out of compliance or whatever, and what we're going to see the courts decide, right? That would be interesting to see.
I have 100% faith in lawyers that they will find a way to sue OpenAI and try to get money from them.
Oh yeah, and it'll be pretty easy. I don't think it can replace a lawyer anytime soon.
Yeah, and then so one last thing, and then we'll start to wrap up. Is you mentioned this treasure trove of knowledge that you have a blog for your clients. So is that blog, is that like free? It's available to everyone, or do you actually have something that once you're a subscriber, you get access to additional knowledge? How does that work?
It's totally free, so you can go to termageddon.com/blog and
Mhm.
you can read anything that you want to read. One thing that's probably going to be interesting for our lawyer listeners is we have a state privacy bill tracker that tracks all of the proposed privacy bills in the United States on there. We do have one special item for our law firm partners, which is a monthly newsletter for them, where I put together what I believe to be the most important privacy news and some events that they might be interested in attending, things like that. But it's not really something that's it's not really a paywall because the law firm partnership is free. We also give you a free license so you can test out our product and everything and see how it works and make sure it meets your expectations. But yeah, once a month I do send a newsletter just for the lawyers, just because I think it's fun, but that's about it.
Well, I'll definitely make sure to link to that in the show notes as well. Any other offerings that we should know about for that my audience
I
would like
think
to
it's
know?
really, the Law Firm Partners Program. So yeah, we give you a free license. You can test out the product, and then you can purchase additional licenses for your clients, and set up their policies that way. That's probably what would be of most interest to listeners. Yeah, and it's completely free.
Well, I will tell you that it sounds like something I need to sign up for because I have been sending people to Termageddon and I was not aware of that.
Yeah.
And and then just one last thing, I love your treasure trove of knowledge behind a paywall comment because that is literally part of my business model. Is instead of having a free blog, which a lot of lawyers do, I decided I can't compete in the SEO space with that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a knowledge base that only subscribers get access to. So that's part of that $20 a month value. It's not just getting in touch with me and getting legal advice. They're getting access to my treasure trove of knowledge behind a paywall. But that's because I want there to be value that my clients are always getting with
Mhm.
their monthly subscription, even if they don't end up like talking to me or using other legal services, right? So like that's been my solution to the ethical conundrum of are subscriptions ethical for clients that don't actually call you or have you analyze a contract for them.
I think your situation is a lot different than ours, though. So for us, we're not a law firm, we're
Mhm.
not a legal service provider, we're just a tech company,
Right.
right? So for us to make that blog available for free, it's very, very easy because our product that we sell, it's different than what's in the blog, right?
Right.
Versus for somebody who's a law firm sharing that knowledge behind a paywall, I think that makes a lot more sense because it is a subscription service and it's a supplementary material to the legal advice. So I think it's
Right.
just different situations. And I think your situation makes a lot of sense since you're a lawyer offering legal advice versus for us, we're not.
Right. And correct me if I'm wrong, but the blog and the free information that you are giving out on your website is sort of research and work that you're already doing anyway. but
Right.
you're two birds, one stoning it. So if you're doing the research to make sure your product is compliant anyway, you might as well put some of that out there for free.
For sure. And some of it I kind of selfishly do for myself anyway. So the privacy bill tracker, it's a lot easier to keep it on the website than it is for me to keep it with the spreadsheets. And if we have clients who have questions about the service, so, why do I need to update my privacy policy? It's a lot easier for me to just link to a blog post and write it all from scratch again and again and again. So it actually helps us reduce support requests, which is definitely a business benefit for sure.
And I get the same benefit from my knowledge base for my clients. It's
Yeah.
not having to answer the same questions over and over. With that, I just have one last question that I ask all my guests. And Donata, that is a hot dog a sandwich, and why?
Is a hot dog a sandwich? I would say it is a sandwich because it comes in between bread. And, if you grew up in the type of area that I grew up in, maybe you used regular bread instead of the hot dog buns. So I would count it as a sandwich. Yeah. You can
All
put
right.
lettuce on it if you want. I'm from Chicago, so you can put, your giardiniera sauce or whatever on there, which I don't like, but my husband loves. So I'm going to call it a sandwich. Yeah.
All right. I love it. If anyone wanted to follow up with you, where's the best way for them to do that?
So you can find us online at termageddon.com, termageddon.com. And you can email me at donata@termageddon.com, and that's DONATA.
All right, great. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Thanks again to 650 and Gavel for sponsoring this show. The best way for others to discover this show is for you to share it with someone you think would find a value from it. Follow me on LinkedIn, since that's where I'm most active on social media, and click the bell towards the top right of my profile to get notified about all of my posts about this podcast and everything else I think is valuable for you to see. To get in touch, message me on LinkedIn or email Kurbis@lawsubscribed.com. All links are in the show notes. Until next time, this is Matthew Kurbis with Law Subscribed.